Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Andy Arnott, and this is Seller Roundtable number 50 with my co-host.
Amy Weiss.
And we're super excited to have Brandon Young on. I can't believe it's taken us this long. Brandon, welcome.
Yeah, great to be on. I know that we've tried in the past, but schedules didn't align, travel, all that good stuff. But I'm glad I'm finally here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're gonna shoot from the hip today, but we're gonna start out with a couple of our standard questions. Just because, like Amy said, you've been on a lot of podcasts and been interviewed a bunch, but we don't know too much about your past. So we're gonna grill you there. So if you can share as little or as much as you like, but things like where you were born, where you live now, some past jobs, college, school, just kind of like leading up to the Amazon world.
Yeah, so I mean, it just to give you guys the brief version. I started out degree in finance, helping my family with their business, family business. Always been entrepreneurs. Wholesale construction supply industry. Um, my father passed away in 2007. I decided to go back to school, get an MBA. Decided when we sold the business. Unfortunately, we sold it like at the downturn 2008, when construction was really plummeting. Everything was kind of poor, kind of what we're about to get into now. Terrible economy, but then decided to get into I've get into investing in startups, helping others with startups, help them with scaling and getting something profitable or investable. Met my now wife. We started Amazon in 2005. Got married in 2007, right? Yeah. Gotta verify.
Right.
So yeah, so then we 2005 we were doing wholesale. We started with liquidation and wholesale. We wanted to try to do something a little bit more scalable than arbitrage. I wasn't a really fan of shopping, or to me it was more of a job. And then had some issues with some of the brands getting gated. One of them in particular, because I went back to construction supplies since I knew it and had contacts there. So I was selling DeWalt tools, and then they started to get gated. So I said, okay, that's not that sustainable. But my wife being from China, I said, all right, we need to go to China. Why aren't we doing private label? We have the connections over there. Like, you can help source it. We can do it. We have family. And so we went to Canton Fair in 2016. A couple months later, we launched our first private label products, and we've been doing that only private label ever since, really.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, that's a interesting backstory. I love the backstory because the journey up to being an Amazon, being an Amazon. I hate saying Amazon seller. I used to say that, but now it's like being in e-commerce, because Amazon's only one of the platforms that we should all be utilizing, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think you start to get more well-rounded. I think people, you have those different layers, and then you have a progression. You have people that come in that are just doing a side hustle, they're doing arbitrage or just flipping stuff. Those are just FBA sellers, right? And then if you can turn it into a full-time job and replace your job with it, then you start looking at things like wholesale and things that are just the way that you can scale that business. I mean, my good friends Max and Garland scaled to 10 million dollars with arbitrage, but they had a huge warehouse, 8 or 9 employees, shoppers, processors. They treated it like a real business and were able to scale, but it was basically just arbitraging man hours at that point and finding deals and having people travel around. But that's not the ideal situation for most people. And most people are happy with just an extra few $1,000s a month, just flipping stuff that they find, in stores. For us, it was always like, how do we create a real successful business out of this? So that's where wholesale and private label came in.
Yeah, outstanding. So, on that same note, I mean, what do you guys? I know that you have multiple brands. Seven. I think you're in seven and or maybe eight figures in some of those brands. What are you guys doing today to scale those brands? Are you doing anything different? I know that you're bringing into chatbots. Anything else that you guys are doing today that you feel like kind of gives you an unfair advantage that you'll tell everybody here and they'll be like, yeah, that's a great idea, but only like 2% of them will actually go and execute.
The what I think where I think our advantage lies is in our processes, right? Because we're able to move quickly, and I think that we have a really deep understanding of the algorithm, and and the latest changes in the algorithm, and we stay on top of that. So we're able to launch products, do like pick better products because of our keyword research strategy, but also launch products more effectively and more efficiently because we understand what Amazon wants exactly to rank a product. All the data is there, everything's available at your fingertips, but if you don't really understand how the algorithm works or why, then you don't know how to implement that. And I think a lot of people are still throwing darts with choosing products, and I think a lot of people are still burning a lot of money and lighting a lot of money on fire with bad launch strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. So Amy and I harp on, all the sourcing tools, right? We're not harping on any of the people that run those tools. As you know, it's a small community. I love all those guys, but the Jungle Scouts and the Viral Launch, and Helium 10, they all have these, quote unquote, like sourcing tools, right? You're not a big fan of those things either, are you? Because to me, they have a place in terms of data, but so many people use those as the starting point and the ending point of picking a product, and that's why you end up with thousands of people with fidget spinners sitting in a warehouse, right?
Yeah, I mean, so to me, like it's a danger for everyone to be putting the same numbers into a software and getting the same results back. And to me, it's an even, you get a lot of the fake gurus out there that have courses or whatever that teach certain methodology that's going to lead to all of their students finding the same few products also. So that's why, like you said, you have 20 pages of people that are stuck with scratch off maps and all of the other products that we know that everyone has that they got stuck with because it looked like a good opportunity at the time, margin was good, and then all of a sudden they launch it along with 200 other people that launched it, and it's the same exact product with the same exact images. And so so I do like using some of those tools just to put in I'll put in different criteria. Like I'll use like Helium 10's black box. You mentioned that each one has their own, like, they all have, but I'll keep changing that criteria. And then I'll look at, if I find a successful seller in a niche, I'll look at their storefront and I'll look at what else they're selling or launching. I'll look at, like another methodology that we have that I created is called like the audience method. So I won't search for a specific product, but I'll search for the audience that I want to sell to. So if I want to search for sell something to fishermen, I'll actually just go to Amazon and I'll search for fishermen. And it's funny because I don't care what's on page 1 for fishermen. Like no one's going on Amazon and trying to buy fishermen and searching for just fishermen. But if your product is for fishermen, then it's probably indexed for fishermen, but it might be on page 15, right? So then I can just go through 20, 30 pages of the results for that and find products that are selling more than 10 or 20 a day and find out, okay, now how are they getting their sales? What are the real keywords they're ranked on to get those sales? And so I use that methodology a lot too. And then I just get ideas like, that's why I go to trade shows too. I think going to trade shows and just getting ideas while you're walking around booths is really important. Another good thing that we do is like, we'll go to showrooms, which is basically the same as going to a show, but it's more private. So like, for example, we have like 3 toy brands, and in Shantou in China, they have these showrooms that you can go into. And the business model is this: it looks like a Target or a Walmart, and it's like 5 stories high. And every single floor has this section. And in that section are a bunch of different random toys. And that's one entire factory's representation. Then you go to the next section, it's another factory. So it's like every section on this floor as you're going is different factories. And then they follow you around. They treat the buyers like gold. So what they're doing is they're charging the factories to be in there because there's 12,000 toy factories in Shantou. And they're charging all of the factories to be in there. But then the buyers come in, they follow you around with a cart. You point to a product on the wall, they scan it. And if it's if you want it, they'll put it in the cart so you can go back later and play with it in a private room and test it and stuff. And then at the end, everything that you scanned is given to you on a printout sheet and digitally so that you have the contact information for the factory, the price, and everything.
So
and
it's kind of like it's kind of like at Global Sources where they do like the matching, or some of the trade shows where they do the matching services with matching with the factories. Can we talk about the food in Shantou for a second? Can we just talk
Okay, where are you going to go with that?
food?
Where are you going to go with that?
Oh, it's so good. The
So
food in
good.
Shantou is incredible. You don't like it?
Oh my gosh. All right,
Oh.
so funny thing is, right before the Chinese New Year, right before we almost got stuck there with the virus, we were there and we were finalizing a bunch of orders. That's when we were supposed to speak, I think. Like I was over there already. And one of the factory owners we went and visited to finalize a deal for like 3 or 4 different SKUs. He's like, I insist, I got to take you to lunch. And I was like, no, I don't really want to go to lunch, because like like I do like how the showrooms bring you food and it's great. Like it's not bad. There are some good places, but this guy's insisting. And so he takes us to this place. It's a slum. It's straight up just a slum. And he brings us to this you can't describe it as more than a shack. You've got like these tables that are held together. It looks like something that you would nail, like you would cut a tree and make your own table. And then there's just these buckets that they're washing all the dishes in, next to where we're eating. And then you see the fish and you see the fresh food that they're cooking, and it's all raw. And then they're just pulling it out, breaking like the heads off with their hands and throwing it in the pots. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is going to be abysmal.
That is right? the complete opposite of my
That was my last experience eating in Chanteau, just so you know. So when you said, how about the food in Chanteau? That's immediately what I thought of. I thought you were going to go there.
We have to try again. I definitely want to check out this. Place that you went to. I need to shop this place. I don't have any toys. You know, I'm in the pet area, but yeah, I would definitely love to check that out. And we need to take you to a better restaurant in Chanteau, clearly.
Yes. So I've been to a couple good places. It's not bad. What's amazing is like you go there and a hotel costs you $25 a night. Yeah. You're like staying in a place that's better than a day. Like you're not at the Marriott, right? But you're not at a motel. It's decent. There's a chain that we stay at called what's the flower? What is it? Oh, the Lavendy. So it's like lavender, but with an E, with no R. And they have them all throughout China, and they're $25, $30 a night. Maybe if there's like the Canton Fair going on, it's $60. But like it's the most affordable place to stay. And it's fine. Nice, comfortable beds. Nice. It's all remodeled. Showers are beautiful. Like, you know, I can't ask for more. I'm not spending too much time there. Yeah.
So this place that you talked about in Chanteau, is it open all year round, kind of like Iwu is? Is it more of like a market, or is it a seasonal kind of thing?
No, they are open all year round. So there's multiple, right? They all compete against each other. So they're all trying to treat the buyers better and trying to groom the sellers, like the factories, put their stuff in there. They verify that they're real factories. They're open year round. You can't get access unless you go through a broker, though, because you have to verify that you're a broker. So they don't just do end sellers. You can't go knock on the door and just walk in. So we just from our contacts and our team there, we were able to get in.
Very cool. So I love that you use, lots of different ways. You talked about, you of course use tools, but you're also just using common sense. You're looking at Amazon, you're searching for some things, you're checking out what the results say. And I love that because, it's all right there in front of us. And I think sometimes people just generally overthink it. And, if we just think about it as supply and demand and what's out there, and we look at opportunities, you can just use Amazon as a way to do your research. And then you use the other tools as data points. So I love that. I saw your kind of a little bit of what you do with keywords, and I took some from that, as well as improved some of my PPC strategies using your techniques as well. So I definitely appreciate learning from all different techniques.
That's awesome.
I agree that it's really important to keep on top of the ever-changing landscape with the algorithm, because Amazon's a search engine and you need to get found. And if you're not keeping up with those things, you're not going to be found. And if you're not converting, if you're not paying attention to what you're doing and converting, you're going to get lost. So many people, as you mentioned, they've got products out there and they're just not making sales, and they're not looking at it from a customer's perspective. Do you do any of that, Brandon? Do you ever kind of just go through your listings and look at them from a customer's perspective and kind of check out what competitors are showing up on your page? What do you do in terms of after you've launched, kind of keeping up with your listings and taking a look at the landscape?
Yeah, we're always iterating and trying to improve. I mean, it's one of those things where it's the quest for perfection. Like perfection is impossible, but I always have my my employees. Now it's more out of my hands. So I actually have I still handle a lot of the launch, but the growth team is its own team. in that we have. And so what we have them doing is just constantly going back and trying new main images, testing coupons versus Amazon Prime, discounts, testing different price points, and seeing where we need to be as far as optimizing the listing and optimizing the price to maintain keyword ranks. And then they're handling PPC on that end too. Like we talk about a lot of the PPC, and it's only more recent, like in the last year or so, that PPC has started to play either a positive or negative impact on keyword ranks. It used to be that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, the good old days, the more you spent on PPC, the better your listing did, no matter if it was profitable or not, or how it was converting. You could basically just spend your way to the top of anything. Nowadays, if your PPC is performing poorly, it has a negative impact on your overall performance of your listing. So if your overall conversion rate goes down below your competition, or your click-through rate's lower because your PPC isn't getting clicks or conversion, then it's going to negatively impact those keyword ranks. And then those organic keyword ranks are what drives the organic sales. And so it's a downward spiral. I see a lot of people that are their listing starts to slide, so they spend more in PPC, which causes it to slide even more, which means now your tacos, like your overall PPC sales to regular sales, starts to go the wrong direction, right? You're trying to, you end up with a less profitable product over time instead of more. So I think the biggest thing for us is just constantly measuring, making small incremental changes and measuring what exactly that's doing to our listing, positive or negative, so that we can constantly make those incremental improvements.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that no matter how much you increase a bid, if you're not converting well, that data is going to count against you, and you're just going to keep fighting a losing battle. So it's really great that you find that out, and that you recommend that people are making those little small changes and then actually seeing what the results are. I know Andy talks about that a lot.
Yeah. And the other thing I've heard Brandon talk about, which is the same thing we do, is the mid-tail keywords, right? Like the going for the primary keywords are great, but once again, if you're in even a slightly competitive niche, fighting against a big established brand, those guys have unlimited budgets, right? So they can as soon as you raise your bid, they can raise their bid, and they'll just keep doing it and until you go negative. So going for those mid-tail, long-tail keywords on PPC is really how as a little guy you can actually compete against some of these mega brands.
Yeah, a lot of the major brands we found, like we love competing against them. And it's funny, when I was at the toy show a few weeks ago, just walking around and looking at all the major brands that are there, and then just quickly doing a search on Amazon for their products, it was like, man, they are bad at Amazon. But then of course, like so I was there, and my good friend Eddie Levine is a brand manager, and he manages a bunch of brands, and obviously he wouldn't tell me which ones he manages, but I would just ask them. I was like, hey, so who does your Amazon stuff? Oh, we do it in house. We're good on that. Like I didn't want to manage their Amazon brand. I was just wondering if they do it in house or have someone. And then they would all insist like, oh, they're pros, right? Like they have a team and they're really good at it, but obviously they aren't. They just don't understand the extra layer of research that you can do to find those long tail keywords. That's what separates, I think, when you choose a product that could potentially become competitive. The only reason you should choose that product in the first place is if it has a lot of good keywords to sell on. Because what distinguishes you from somebody else would be, can you rank for the majority of those keywords when they can't? And I think that's the bottom line. Most sellers don't know how to A, find those keywords, B, rank on them. And if you can do both of those things, you're just going to stay ahead of them anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I love to pick on you. We're mentioning big brands, Stanley Tools. Go and do a search for Stanley Tools on Amazon, and
I saw them there. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple of competing products with Stanley Tools, and
Me too.
I love to use it as an example because they absolutely are horrible. I mean, literally, like one of their screwdrivers, it says like Phillips head screwdriver. That's the title, and I'm like, holy.
That's the whole title. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So now they have a toy. So I sell toy tools against them, and so they're launching their Stanley Juniors and their other tools. Like they're launching more of a toy brand, because they did the real tools that are for kids, and they were showing up on some of our keywords, but they're way down and not doing very, very well. And now they're launching actual toys against us. So I asked them, I was like, oh, that's great, you guys are launching this. When is it live? Who's doing your Amazon? And they're like, they were one of the people that said, yeah, we're good. We do it out of like, I guess they're out of Germany or something. And they're just like, yeah, we're good. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Okay, good job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's where, and that's why I still tell so many people that, even though it's getting really, really hard to compete on Amazon, there is still a huge opportunity if you know what you're doing. The people who
Absolutely.
are turning dials are the ones who are going to do well because, they're finding those little edges that the big companies, either are too ignorant to know about or just don't take the time to learn, right? They're not turning dials. Once those big corporations, have their processes in place, that's what they use, right? Like, oh, here's how you launch, and here's the process. Even though like a month ago, the algorithms changed, or there's a new ad, like video ad that spun up on Amazon, that they don't even know about till like next year, right?
I think
Um,
like a lot of them completely ignore it too, Andy, because like Stanley, for example, yeah, their stuff is terrible on Amazon, but they've got such a large retail presence. And I've worked with some bigger brands that are wanting to get into e-commerce, and it's almost like they ignore the fact that you have to have e-commerce knowledge. They think that, okay, we can just post our products up there and then they'll just sell because they're so used to just shipping a product to retail and then waiting for their next order. But what they forget, I think, is that if you are in Walmart or Costco or Target or something like that, you've got to have a team to manage that store, right? Stanley, I'm sure, has a team for Home Depot. I'm sure they have a team for Lowe's, but I doubt that they've put any time or effort into their team for Amazon. And that's a huge mistake, in my opinion.
Well, they do. They have. I guarantee you, they do have a team for Amazon, but it's one person who's in charge of everything, right? They're like
Yep.
the marketer, the list, putting up the listings. Like they're probably doing everything, or they've hired, some other agency who's a marketing agency who doesn't really know that much about
And
Amazon, but
I
they're
think what happens too is Amazon reaches out to a lot of these big brands. And Amazon's like, yeah, we'll help you out. We'll get you all set up. And you guys know what a joke that is, right? So
yeah.
these big brands, I've worked with a few of them, and their staff has worked directly with Amazon. And then they'll come with me on a consulting call and I'll be training them on just some basics like SEO, listing optimization. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you know about what's your main keyword here? What kind of keywords are you guys targeting? And they're like, uh, keywords. Amazon just puts those in for us, I think.
What are
Yeah.
you talking about? It's Phillips screwdriver.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Exactly. Phillips screwdriver. I love it. Yeah, it's really interesting though. I agree. There's so much ground that can be covered in the e-commerce side of things, and you don't have to be afraid to compete with the big brands. And in many times, the big brands, Amazon's the least of their concern. They have a huge opportunity there that they're missing out on, but that's a great place for e-commerce sellers to take advantage.
Yeah, it's funny, these big brands, like not only the big brands but big agencies, even big publications. So Search Engine Journal, if you guys don't know about it, is like a huge SEO publication. If you're doing like web SEO and things like that, they're spot on every time. Like really, really good stuff. But they recently posted an article about Amazon PPC, and they were literally like completely wrong, and leading people down the trail that would not work well for them if they followed that advice. So it's interesting that, in my opinion, if you're going to go for Amazon advice, look at people like Brandon, some of these people who are turning dials and actually like in the trenches. I have a hard time believing anybody who's never sold on Amazon, right? I mean, that to me, that's a little bit of a red flag in terms of, it's a Google agency, Google ad or Facebook ad agencies. That's like, hey, yeah, now we're doing Amazon, right? Because to me, they're lacking that expertise and the years of knowledge of turning
It's a
dials and
completely different
actually,
learning curve. Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So Brandon, do you do like a 80/20? I know that you're probably, if you're anything like Amy and I, you've always got these like little ideas, little projects in your head, and it's hard to stay focused. Are you working on any kind of fun side projects besides e-commerce and Amazon?
I've always got a million things I want to do. You're absolutely right. And
Yeah.
the only one that keeps me steered in the right direction is my wife. So that's why we make such a good team. But we've got a couple things that we're doing. We've got a software project we're working on or two. We've got some off Amazon investments that we're working on. Yeah, so there's always some things that we're doing a little bit off of Amazon. One of the big things that we're trying to figure out right now is I want to start investing in my students. So The inner circle students that show a lot of promise, that have launched a product or two, have shown that they understand the methodology, work hard, execute it well, are smart and capable, I want to kind of accelerate their growth. So I want to do like an accelerator program where I give them some cash. They get free membership into the inner circle for the rest of their career, whatever it is, and then maybe some extra one-on-one time every month, and kind of build a portfolio of companies that I'm growing that way. So it's a good investment portfolio for me, a good way to diversify. It's still within the Amazon sphere, so it's not really diversified that way, but I still think Amazon is the best dollar for dollar investment in the world right now. So, there's only so much we can do personally with ourselves and our teams. So then we have another, besides investing in students, then we're going to start building up pockets of teams. So the way that they scale in China is slightly different. And my wife likes to lean that direction, which is we take the talented Amazon employees, or employees that have worked for other companies that have shown promise, but they don't have their own capital. And we fund basically a new entity with them. And we just do a profit share with them and help them grow and spawn off. It's kind of the way Anchor did it. Aki, a lot of these other companies, they would just take like a team of 3 people that for tasks, and they would fund and say, you have carte blanche to pick a niche in a product or a few products and start launching. You have to launch X amount of products. Like their KPIs would be launching X amount of products per month. And then it would be slightly overseen, but like for the most part, pretty autonomous, which means it would be a really scalable. And then once they had success a few months in, then you can graduate one of those people to another team leader, and then just keep growing it that way and just scale that way. So that's another way that we're looking to build up more portfolios, and wealth within the amazing opportunity that Amazon FBA is and private label is.
Yeah, I love it. So it's like little Amazon strike team commandos, right? So
Yeah.
you're getting the 3-man team out, seeing who,
Yeah.
seeing who
And
can.
yeah, 100%. And what's amazing is like once you get to the scale, then you have those economies of scale that start to kick in, and like the software we're creating can help to automate a lot of those processes. We can, for my students and the people that we invest in, then we can help with logistics and consolidating, shipments to bring down costs, and PPC help, and all the inner circle training we already do. But on top of that, the actual real stuff that will bring down a lot of those costs at scale. That they normally wouldn't have access to as a new startup or a new business.
Yeah, absolutely. So we alluded to it in our title, but when we were talking with Brandon, I wanted to pick his brain in terms of the coronavirus. It's on everybody's mind, and people have widely differing opinions on that. I was just curious because Brandon, when I see something like this come out, like I'm always searching for data, right? Like you can listen to the news all day long, but to me, if you look at the data, that's going to tell the story, right? So are you like looking at data? How are you taking that the risk into account? And after that, with the inevitable decline of the economy, which has already kind of started to happen, what are you hedging your bets on in terms of investments, or with your Amazon business, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I've had to revise like our growth. We originally, going into the year, we were planned on projected to do about 15 million in revenue, and with now, like we went back to the drawing board on that. We think we'll be right around 10. So I mean, you're talking about a significant 30 to 40% decrease in top line revenue. Some of our lines are impacted more than others because we have a lot of travel accessories. We have a lot of a percentage of our business is in the travel space. So I think that that's going to be directly impacted for the next 6 months. Obviously, no one's going to be going anywhere, but it's really frustrating because like I have these discussions, and for the last month, like because I saw it firsthand, and when I was in China and I barely got out, and then I have family there and I have employees there, and multiple provinces, and I can see all the ways that they handled it there. And it like I knew that they stopped it faster and better than anyone else in the world can. If it spreads here, it's not going to be stopped because you have too many people that are in denial, and you have an inept government that isn't doing testing, that isn't out there in the front lines actually stopping any. They haven't done anything, right? You have people that are looking at snapshots of data and saying, you know, they say they like to look at data too, right? But obviously, like
But they're not though.
you
Yeah,
and I
they're not
actually,
though.
yeah, they're not though. And you and I actually looking at data, you have to look at progressions and you have to look at trends and you have to look at, you know, previous performance of where this already impacted. And you can see the what happened if you look now, like, and you see what happened in Italy and you see what happened in South Korea, and then, you know, you project that to over here, and that's with them having a stronger response than we had, right? And so the only way that this was stopped in China is because they literally shut the entire country down for 30 days and no one left their house for 30 days. It was, you could leave every second or third day with one person from each household could leave their house every second or third day with a government ID. There was armed guards on every street corner. You could walk to them. They would escort you to the local grocery store. You could get some groceries for your family and go straight back home. And that was the way it was in the entire country for 30 days. And then they said, okay, now we're going to allow some people to start traveling to go back to work. But they started people working remotely if you could, right, during that time. And now they've got it pretty much under control. The number of new cases has been going down rapidly. They have very, very few new cases being diagnosed, but now it's to a point where they can just shut down another area if there's a relapse, but the rest of the country can continue to work because travel is still really restricted. They're
Yeah.
going to be the first country that's back up and operating in the world, and we're going to get smashed with this virus. We're going to be worse than they were ever, because I think that we're not having that type of response here. And people like to look at it and say, oh, total number of cases, total number of dead, it's the flu is worse. And that's the most frustrating talking point that ever happened, because like I saw that it's just starting to spread. Like the virus was spread, like the flu is doesn't spread as easily as this virus. And the death rate is 30 to 35 times worse than the flu. So if you just look at the progression, the exponential growth of this virus, and you see what's happening in Italy, South Korea, what happened in China, then you'll know that what's going to happen here is going to be, you know, catastrophic. But people are still not taking it seriously because they feel like the death rate for an average person in their 30s that's in decent shape is less than, you know, 0.5% or whatever. But never mind the fact that it's like 20% for anyone that's over 60, that, or anyone with medical conditions.
That's what concerns me is I agree that we need to, it's fine for people that are going to recover from it, right? Like that,
Yeah.
it's, if you're in good health, this is probably not a concern for you, but spreading it to someone that could not survive it, if we don't pay attention and we don't take the right measures to protect, to prevent spreading to people who could not fight it. We lost over what, I think it was 16,000 deaths from just the flu this year, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, in the flu, we know how to treat, and we know, you know, unfortunately, some of us like me got the wrong strain of the flu shot. So I got like horribly sick anyway, but bottom line, I could survive that. Now, those people that got the wrong strain of the flu shot, like I did, that couldn't survive it, look at how many deaths we had. So I agree with you where, yeah, some people are overreacting, but then in other cases, I think we're underreacting in preventing the spread, because we
Yeah.
don't want to be spreading it to
Well, it's
people that
absolutely
couldn't fight it.
devastating. I mean, look what happened in Seattle with that nursing home, right? Like,
Yeah.
it gets into one nursing home where everyone's in their 60s or 70s and older and frail, and it was an
Yeah. Oh.
incredible amount of deaths. Like the percentage there is insanely high. My mom's in her 70s, and I worry for her safety right now, because everyone's still running around and doing their own thing. And granted, we only have, you know, we're up to like 10 or 20 cases here in Broward County where she lives. And so that's a lot. That means that there's actually hundreds of cases, if not thousands, because like you walk around for 14 days spreading it before you have it, and it doubles, like that actual known number doubles every 5 days, and that's only with tested, because we're not testing here in the United States. So if we were actually giving enough tests, the real number should be 80 known cases and probably 1,000. You know, so where is it really? How many people in South Florida really have it? And we won't know until it's really way too late. We're going to have a large percentage of the population that gets sick here in South Florida. and we're only a couple, a week or two away from it ballooning, because it is an exponential growth every time. And if you look at resolved cases, a lot of people say, oh, the majority of people that get this are going to live. Yeah, of course they will. Like 97% supposedly right now, if you look at deaths and cases, but deaths is a lag because people have to be sick for a period of time before they die. So if you look at new cases arising and its exponential growth, new cases outweigh resolved cases. If you look at only deaths to resolved cases, the death rate's like 6%.
Yeah, I think this is a really tough situation. It's not like we haven't been through, different viruses in the past, and we haven't kind of been through situations like this. I think, in this case, the spreading is definitely concerning. But what do you think, Brandon? If you were responsible for this nation, what would you implement as a measure in order to prevent? What do you think is the right action for the United States to take?
I think any area that has I would suspend all travel. I would take any area that has cases and I would lock it down. I would do a mandatory 2 to 3 week vacation, like stay at home. I would do massive stimulus plan to make sure people can afford to get food and aren't going to go bankrupt, right? Like I would figure out a way to forgive rent and bills for that month, right? Just literally suspend everything, take care of everything for the month. It would be a really expensive thing, but it would be the only way to stop it. It would be basically what they did in China, and it would be like a state or a region by region thing. Right now we have Northern California, we have Southern California, we have Seattle, we have cases in North Carolina just created, we have New York, we have New Jersey. Like if we had done this originally, when as soon as we started to get cases and just said, you know what, but are you going to stop? What is it? 8 million people walking around in New York City. Like, are you going to be able to just say, hey, stop, don't go anywhere. Stay in your home. How many are going to listen to you? And then entire buildings, like it spreads in a building because you're sharing the same AC or you're sharing the toilet system. It can become aerosolized. And when you flush the toilet, it goes to your neighbor. Like this is what happened in China because the virus isn't just a heavy droplet virus that sits on a door handle or you shake someone's hand or whatever, and you spread it that way. It can become aerosolized too. So the virality of it and how quickly it spreads is insane. We're still trying to figure out like average person spreads it to what, like what the R zero is, right? And we know it's much higher than the flu. So
do you think if we took those measures to lock everything down and prevent all travel, do you think that it would ultimately solve the problem?
Yeah, of course, because then you start to root it out. You need 2 to 3 weeks just to see who's really sick. If you stay in your house for 2 to 3 weeks and your neighbor gets sick, that means you're not going to get sick, but you probably would have, right? Now, if you're in a small town, like, and you don't really interact with too many people anyway, then your odds of sharing it aren't that good. But if you're in a rural area, in a city or in an office building, and you're going to infect everyone in that office, you're going to infect everyone in that town, everyone eventually is going to get it, and it's going to spread that much faster. So the more heavily densely populated areas are going to spread it faster. I think that you would need to shut everything down in an area. It would be painful. No one would like it. People wouldn't want to be sitting at home for that. But you have air conditioning and Netflix and food and drinks, and like you have a refrigerator and freezer. Like you're going to survive. And you just take a 2 to 3 week mandatory vacation at home and to see who's really sick and who isn't. And then you can start getting people to the treatment that they need and stop the spread and start cleaning up. And that would probably take a month-long process in any given area. The fact that we haven't done that, though, and we're not going to do that is the problem. I think that you're going to end up with millions and millions of people that get this and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people dead.
Yeah, Brendan, I think the point that, and this is kind of what I've been thinking about a lot too, is, of course, people, this is all of our opinion, right? Like none of this is fact. We're not doctors. We're not scientists. I just want to preface that these are our opinions, but, I would like to think that, all of us here are good at looking data, good at looking at data, and, good at doing, when you run an Amazon business, I know it doesn't seem like it translates, but we are the kind of people who look at trends, look at statistics, and, look at data a lot. So, that's not making us doctors, but, it's just our opinion. That being said, I think what Brandon alluded to is the reason why it could get a lot worse here, and why I think it got really bad in Italy and things like that. Number one, in a Western culture, it's much harder for us to tell people to do things, right? People are do not like authority here. They don't like, if the National Guard rolls out in states, which it probably will have to, people are going to be uneasy with that. I know I'm
It's
going to
already
be
done
on.
in New York. Yeah, as of
Yeah,
today.
I'm going to be uneasy about that. But that being said, in China, the government there is, of course, it's more hard-handed. So when they say stay home, people stay home. Here, that's going to be a lot harder for the government to enforce. And so just that fact alone, I think, is why, we probably will have it worse here. Now, that being said, all these statistics, all these reporting, it's not, you couldn't even say it's within the margin of error, right? Because we just don't know. It's so early on. But at this point, it might be better for us to err on the side of caution in terms of, working from home, limiting contact with your neighbors, limiting, trying to keep people out of large public gatherings, things like that. That's a good start. People are starting to do that. But right now it's only in the areas that have gotten the cases. And, that might not be enough. It might be where we have to do it everywhere. And, like Brandon was saying, give it a couple weeks to see what actually shakes out, because there's so many people out there right now who probably have it, who don't even know that they have it. Now, I'm not too worried about it, between me and my wife and my kids. Luckily, kids, don't seem to be highly affected by this. But I also have, parents, and my mom has a lung issue. My father-in-law has a lung issue. My dad, is a cancer survivor. Same thing with my mom. Like, they would all be considered pre-existing, and the statistics for them in their 70s is pretty horrid. So, anyway, that's we could
No, I
talk
mean,
about this
Andy,
even
you're
more,
you're
but
you're spot on with that, right? Like all we can do is look at what the progression in those other places, what they did to mitigate it or didn't, and then what we're doing as opposed to what they did, and then what the results were, right? And
yep,
so for us, we're really doing nothing. We're not testing enough people. We're not restricting much of anything. We're canceling some festivals. We're canceling some large events, and I think like the response is a little bit too little, too late at this point, unless we start taking some serious measures, which it looks like they are going to with activating the National Guard, mandatory cancellation of large events. But if something goes into effect with a quarantine, you're talking about 2/3 of the economy is hospitality based in the U.S. We're talking about restaurants and retail shops all being shut down for a period of time. A lot of them don't have the savings to sustain that. A lot of people are going to go bankrupt. A lot of people can potentially go homeless. And it's going to be a devastating downturn for our economy. But the alternative is, even if it is only 2%, which I think is on the low end of deaths, right? And the majority of that 2% are geriatrics. You're talking about 100 million people getting sick. You're talking about 2 million deaths. And the majority of those are the older population in our country. And someone said it, well, and not to be cold hearted, they were like, well, that would be good for the economy because the old people cost us more. And I'm like, that's
yeah,
a
unless
terrible
it's
way to look at it.
unless it's their dad or
Yeah, unless it's
grandfather
their, like
or
my mom, I'm absolutely like devastated. Like what a terrible thought, right? And then another friend posted that, oh, maybe the thought is that the government's doing nothing because they just want everyone to hurry up and get it so we can try to recover faster.
yeah.
I mean, it's possible that they're that next leveling us, but I think it's just ineptitude. I think it's just they're just terrible at literally anything. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's God, it's a tough situation, and I fall on both sides. On one token, um, you know, it might not be worse than that, or it might be not be as bad as we're hearing on the news. They like to sensationalize everything, but on the other hand, it's like, I'm one of those people who likes to, it's better to go on the cautionary side of things rather than be too little, too late. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm terrified to have my kids home, my three children home, where where they're in the house for 3 weeks, especially since we don't let them watch TV or Netflix or things like that. So for us, it's going to be difficult. But we have luckily we have an acre, so we can go let them play out in the yard. But yeah, that's going to be hard. And like you said, economy wise, I mean, people it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. I don't think nobody knows, the ripple effect that's going to happen from this already. And it sucks because a lot to do with the economy is perception, right? And if you hear every day about the stock market collapsing and this virus, like people are in panic mode right now. And
Yeah,
absolutely not trying to do that to you guys.
100%.
Honestly, it's just, a conversation here because to me, I've had these, these thoughts and things like that. And I'm just really interested in hearing others' opinions on it. So I think
Yeah,
that
because we don't want people panicking. We want people being diligent, right? And
proactive. Yep.
and so there's a fine line between the two. We're not saying hurry up and go hoard toilet paper. And I think that that's really stupid. I don't know why that's
That's what
happening.
showers are for, people.
Yeah, if get a bidet.
My dad and I were talking about that yesterday. And we're like,
get wet
teepee,
wipes.
like forget the teepee, grab some canned food. You can shower your butt off in the you can
Yeah, if it comes down to it and you run out of toilet paper, you're not going to die. But if you run out of food, you're
exactly.
probably going to be in a rough spot.
Exactly.
Right?
Go for the food and water, people.
Yeah. So, I think that there's a fine line between that panic and between being diligent. But we need people to be diligent, and I think that people aren't yet. I think people are starting to listen, pay attention, and if you're in an area that's schools are being shut down, like it's happening in counties all over the country where schools are being shut down. I know you're not looking forward to it, but it's probably the best bet because kids are little petri dishes and they love to just spread things. They're the carriers of this. It doesn't impact them for whatever reason, but they're happy to go share it with everybody.
Yeah.
Big
All right,
hug.
let's get back to
Big
Amazon.
coronavirus hugs. Yeah. So I would love to hear, we've kind of talked a lot about, there's been so many big changes with Amazon, right? This year, and I mean, I would say the end of 2019, we had so many major changes. And, Brandon, you said you still think that Amazon is one of the best investments. So I would love to hear your take on what do you think the future is on Amazon? Obviously, things are getting very crowded with commodity type products, things that are very easy for Chinese manufacturers to come in and compete, that kind of thing. There's Amazon's going direct to manufacturers saying, hey, list your products here. What do you think is the future of Amazon as far as the landscape is concerned? And what is your advice to new people looking to get into Amazon and how that they can compete in that landscape?
Yeah, I think that the time of throwing darts and using like just looking at sales of the first page of a random keyword and looking at reviews and choosing a product, I think that time's over. So that's why I like a lot of those courses out there that teach that methodology for product selection. Just to name Kevin David, ASM, KT9, like all those guys. The success rate of those students is under 10% for that reason, because they're not looking at enough data. And I think that what Andy, is constantly talking about and what we talk about is if you're going to succeed in this business, then you need to be able to understand how to find the keywords that your competitors are getting their sales from and understand the competitive nature. It's supply and demand. If the demand are all the ways people are searching for something, the supply is how your competitors are meeting that demand. And if they're not doing a good job at it, then you can come in and do it better. And then that's where your opportunity comes in. And the better they're doing at it, then the higher risk you have of doing that product. So you could assign that opportunity and risk score that we like to assign to product. And I think that that's where the opportunity is for people to come into this business today, is if you learn how to do it correctly from the beginning with data, and then you learn how the algorithm is currently working, and then you can adapt to any changes that come out in the future, you're going to be way ahead of the majority of sellers. This isn't, first of all, most people that start a business fail, and that's across every single industry. And the reason is because most people are just bad entrepreneurs, and they don't put their head down and focus, and they give up too easily, and all of those other reasons that entrepreneurs fail. There's no difference here in Amazon. I think a lot of people come into this industry and they expect it to be done for them. They listen to the hype from these con artists saying it's a side hustle gig that you can make millions of dollars working a few hours a week. This is a real business that you're starting. So set up by having the right expectations to look at the data correctly, and then to understand how Amazon's algorithm really works. I think that your success rate is is way above 50% in this business. Like for us, launching is like 80% of products that we launch are successful. My student success rate somewhere around 70%. So I think that if you just have the budget, the capital, and the time to put into it, and you come in with the right mindset, the right work ethic, then I think that, you know, over the course of a few products, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, I think all of us have had those first products that they're either even when you use the data, as you mentioned, Brandon, 20% of your products are not successful. That's okay. That happens.
Yeah.
We tweak, we move on. You know, there's no way to know who else might be launching something similar at the same time. There's no way to know that the market's suddenly going to turn and do something else. We can do our best with data. What would you say, based on your students, for the biggest reasons for failure on your student side of things? And what would, because I'm sure that so many of our listeners right now have had some of those same experiences. And then on that same token, what would you say are some of the ways that can be overcome?
Yeah, so I mean, the common mistakes that I see are just not ordering enough products, right? Like, so running out of inventory, the wrong product selection, like choosing products. So I have students that come in all the time that started maybe with one of those other courses. They chose a few products that are struggling. Not understanding truly how to do PPC, not understanding indexing. And then the most common thing for us is maybe just choosing the wrong style of product, or like we try to make it different and it just doesn't resonate. Like our conversion rate's just lower, right? Like people wanted the striped one.
Yeah, your differentiation.
Yeah, they wanted the striped one and not the polka dot one. Yeah. So that's, we learned that lesson last year, where we just don't let my wife choose the design, and you know, so her style choices just don't resonate with Americans because she's Chinese, I guess. So she finally admitted it. It was hard for her, but I guess we just base it on data. We understand that like certain colors are going to do better. They have higher click-through rates, conversion rates, and then there's ways to get data and look at your competition and really understand like which ones are really doing better than others. And so all of those things just factor in. I think the most common thing for my students and for what I see other people failing, again, are like they try these methods where they just buy 100 units just to test it. And it's like, what does that do? You ruin your honeymoon period. You run out of stock before you could effectively actually gain any consistent rank. Now you're building up bad sales history when you're out of stock. So your ranks are going to be much harder to regain. Like, they don't understand how Amazon works with regards to ranking and averages and being consistent and what metrics Amazon's looking at to decide where your product belongs. And they don't even know how to do the product research to begin with. They're just choosing Me Too products that don't have a lot of opportunity, that are high risk.
I think a lot of people don't realize that it's a long game. It's not a get rich quick thing. It's a long game, and you do have to play the game. It's like starting any business, whether you're going into retail, whether you're doing e-commerce, whether you're going to become a plumber. You have to be better than your competitors to survive, and you have to know that business, and you have to know your customer. And the better that you do with that, the more likely you are to survive. But you also have to realize, like you said, you know, you have to be in it for the long game. What's going to happen after this order? What's going to happen after this order? And then the other thing that I thought you said that was interesting to me was, you know, people are learning still from these old methods that don't work anymore. And how much untraining do you have to do? Andy and I run into that all the time. It's like we're having to kind of retrain. And it's really hard to get people to just let go of that, right? Because they really think, you know, sometimes people just want to follow a formula. It's easier sometimes to follow a formula. And so it's sometimes hard to let go of that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so for us, it's the optimization side would be another reason that you see failure, because they don't know how to do that initial keyword research to understand, okay, so the top line of that is like when someone searches for a keyword, for a certain product through one specific keyword, that it doesn't just impact that one keyword, and people don't understand that part of it. Like, that's like the fundamental foundation that you need to understand, which is I searched for, Starbucks cold brew coffee, right? Now I'm going to impact many keywords in two different places. I'm going to impact from that keyword other ranks for this product when I add it to cart. Not just buy it, but when I add it to cart and buy it. And then I'm going to impact any keywords that have a broad affiliation, a phrase affiliation, or the exact, and at different percentages. Then I'm also going to impact on the way that I built my listing a bunch of keywords in the order that I built them as well. And so once you understand how every keyword impacts every other keyword when it's converted, sold, added to cart, then you understand how to truly optimize your listing and how to truly start pulling the right levers for the ranking. And I think that most people don't have that basic understanding of how keywords work for, and how the algorithm impacts, one keyword impacts all the others at what percentages. I think that's like that high level knowledge that people need to get to, I think.
Yeah, I think just having that really great, it's okay to hire things out, but having that really great foundational knowledge is so important because it affects everything else that you do. So understanding the different match types and why they matter and how they matter, and how the algorithm works and how the work that you put in impacts, how you impacts your sales and impacts your progression is really important. I love that you're pointing that out and that you're helping people focus on those fundamentals. I got to duck out early, Brandon. I really enjoyed having you on the show. We really enjoyed having you on the show. I'm going to let Andy continue to grill you.
Andy, great to see you.
Yeah, definitely great to see you too. And hopefully we can catch up sometime when we don't have coronavirus events getting canceled. We'll talk to you guys soon.
I'm sure. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. So Brandon, I love all that. Yeah. I always say that like you need to look at your Amazon business and especially your Amazon listing, right? Like the foundation of your home, right? If you build a crappy listing, that's like building your house on a crappy foundation, right? I mean, everything,
100%.
Your PPC, how your PPC works, is completely tied to how good your listing is. Your organic, your conversion. I mean, it's so funny because people spend 2 months researching a product using Jungle Scout, and then they'll spend like 30 minutes writing the listing. They just are lazy as heck. They throw the thing up in 30 minutes and then they wonder why they haven't sold anything, right? I mean, to me, that's the biggest frustration. And people, just really, if you were studying anything right now, if you have a product and it's not working, drop everything and just go and learn about how to optimize a listing, and watch Brandon's video, watch my video, get different opinions and perspectives and test it. Because guess what? Brandon doesn't know everything. I don't know everything. We just know what we've done so far in our experience, and it's worked for us and it's worked for people we know, but that, we might be in a different niche than you. And the people who are in your niche are, into organics, and the way that we write a listing, we don't show the passion of like the organic part of that, all these listings have secret sauce as well. So the thing you can do is really get to know, how to build that listing yourself, because if you try to farm it out, nobody's ever going to have that depth of knowledge that you do on your market, especially if it's something you're passionate about.
Yeah. I think that that's the real art behind it, is taking the science, like the data science that we do, and then making it then resonating with the audience that's buying. Like, you still have to write it into something good. It's not like your bullets are just a list of keywords. It's resonating that message that's going to help convert and creating a better listing. Yeah. And that's the bottom line that I see with a lot of people, is like they might have a really nice main image. And there's a lot you can do to optimize your main images and your images that I see like a lot of people come with, but then their listing is just missing so many keywords. And so what ends up happening is relevancy is such an important factor for Amazon to determine where you belong and how your PPC performs. So to determine, like, you get a quality score for your listing per keyword. You get a PPC at a PPC level. You get a quality score at a campaign level, at an ad group level, and at a keyword level. So you have all these quality scores. And then the quality score, the factors are click-through rate, conversion rate, and relevancy, right? Like, so we know that those are the factors that make up a quality score. And relevancy is like one of the biggest pieces of that. And if you confuse Amazon because you didn't write your listing well, or because you're just missing important keywords that you didn't know how to find in the first place, then you're going to end up in a situation where you're never going to be able to rank effectively for a lot of really relevant keywords, and your PPC is going to underperform.
Yeah, Brendan, that's a great point. I know that, within the last, probably 2 or 3 years ago is when Amazon kind of made a shift to a relevancy algorithm. Before that, it was how many keywords you could stuff in the listing, right?
Yeah.
And that's when it was like, the phrase matching didn't really matter. It was just like you would stuff every keyword you could. Those days
Yep.
are gone. Unfortunately, so many people, because that way of optimizing listings was taught for so many years, there's so many people who are still doing that. And I still
Yep.
have to like crowbar it into their mind that like, no, you need to start putting important phrases, not just keywords, into your listing.
Exactly. And
And
exact matters.
yeah, and not go too wide, right? If you try to like put, if you were doing this Chromecast, right? But if you put in here like, project your office screen and project your phone, all these other things, rather than, hey, this is a media device to watch movies and TV, right? Like, go with what, maybe the top 2 or 3 themes of what that product is for, and really concentrate and go deep on that. Because if you try to go too wide, that's when Amazon goes, well, wait a minute, what is this? What is this thing? Like,
Oh, he's
what do
selling
you?
an office projector? Okay.
Right, exactly. And I think so many people miss that point. In this day and age, when it comes to Amazon, that's the most important factor. So when you guys are doing those listings, make sure that you're thinking about that along the way. All right, Brandon.
Absolutely.
Well, we went past an hour. We did it. Is there anything else you wanna cover? And on that note, the few things that I love to ask, which is kind of off the cuff, but I love to hear what people are listening to and reading and things like that, because I get good ideas from it, right? Like my latest one is The One Thing, right? Because I have that entrepreneurial brain that's so scattered. That book is really, I'm trying to get
I really
focused.
enjoyed that. I actually saw him speak at Capitalism conference. And while he was speaking, remind me the author's name.
I
Um,
can't remember.
yeah,
Where's my book?
yeah.
I can't remember.
While he was speaking, I'm sitting there and I'm like thinking to myself, I need to fire. Like I'm such a terrible manager, right? I knew I was a bad manager, but while he's sitting there speaking, I thought to myself, I'm so much worse than I thought I was, right? And so my wife always tells me helps me point out my weaknesses, and I really appreciate that about her, because it's not done in a malicious way. It's done in a check yourself way, because you have room to improve, and it helps me improve. But I was sitting there and I just couldn't believe the impact that his story and what he teaches in The One Thing. So I did end up buying that book, and I thought it was absolutely helped me stay focused throughout the day. And I find myself, I need to go back to that occasionally. And I think I need to go back to it now, because yesterday I was so unproductive because I had 20 things I wanted to get done, and then none of them got done. Like only 2 of them got done.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I actually, I think I'm a pretty quick reader. So I started yesterday. I'm more than halfway through. I only read like, an hour or whatever, but already so far, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to, like you said, go back to this book, reread it multiple times, just because I know that, if I start doing those things, that it's going to make a big impact. And so if you guys haven't read that yet, definitely. But like I tell everybody, the first book to start with, if you haven't yet, is Rich Dad Poor Dad. That should be like your kindergarten reading before you graduate to first grade in terms of reading. That should be, the first book out the door. Or Richest Man in Babylon's another one. Any other kind of books or podcasts, people, things you follow that you felt have made a really big impact on your entrepreneurial journey?
So I subscribe to Blinkist, and I know that it's not always the most detailed version of a book, and it's just they really condense the message. And if it's something really good, I'll try to get the actual full book. But I followed. If you guys don't know what Blinkist is, it's an app, and it's just basically someone summarizing the Cliff's Notes
Yeah, it's
of.
Cliff Notes of business, and well, they have all kinds of books. It's not just
Yeah, they have
business books,
everything
but
now.
but it's yeah, it's great. Like if you're standing in line somewhere or something, that's when I always like to whip that out.
Anytime I'm driving or whatever, yeah, I just love to just turn it on, and it's great, because usually if I'm commuting from where I am in Miami to Broward, where my other office is, then or where my mom is, then I'll be able to get through almost an entire book, because it's like 20 minutes per book. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So Scaling Up was really good. I'm just looking through, and I'm going to see Traction from Gino Wickman was good, and The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck. That was
Yeah, I read the short version of that too, and yeah, I like that too. Lots of great suggestions there. Fantastic. All right, Brandon. So tell people where they can find you. Let them know what you're up to in terms of, your course, your coaching. Anything you want to plug here. Now is the time.
No, I appreciate that. Well, I've got a free course on Amazon. It's 4 sections. It covers um, everything from product discovery, optimization that we spoke about, sourcing, and then launches. And then I've got a masterclass specifically on just product research, how we do our data analysis. It's 5 hours long. That's normally $200 for anyone listening. Just use the promo code BY50 off, and it'll save you $100. So for under $100, you get 5 hours. And then I've got an Inner Circle mastermind, which is more of a college level course. I'm live every week. Ask me anything. I do live classes every 2 to 3 weeks. I'm always updating the content. We have about 500 students in there, and it's a great community. It's just like over 75 of us are doing over 7 figures. We help each other out, and yeah, I mean that's pretty much what I got. And I can set up a discount code for you, Andy, for your listeners if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. We can put that in the show notes when we publish. So great. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Oh, and
Really,
yeah,
really.
sorry. So the website, just to check it
Oh,
out,
yep.
it's stellar-systems.com.
Perfect. All right, guys, go there and check it out, and give Brandon a shout.
Appreciate it.
You can also find him on all the social channels and bug him there. He'll be slinging his coronavirus data out on there. You can check that out. And
I hope I'm wrong, man. I hope this thing
so
just
do I.
The weather gets warm and it disappears like the
so do I. Believe me. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But nothing wrong with being prepared. So I definitely agree with that. Hey guys, if you haven't yet rated, reviewed, and subscribed to the podcast, we really, really appreciate you guys doing that. We mentioned our latest review was a 2-star, and we don't mind getting poor reviews because we like getting feedback. The review we don't agree with in terms of, they said we're giving bad advice in terms of service. But that being said, I appreciate that feedback because I want to know what you guys are thinking. In terms of service, that's a rough one. I mean, that's ever changing. That's a living document. People have different opinions on that. But, we give you guys the information. And when we do talk about something that we think might be iffy on the TOS, we always kind of mention that. So just keep that in mind for everybody who's listening. But once again, we really, really appreciate you guys, getting the word out. The podcast has been growing month over month by thousands of listeners. So we really, really appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you so much again to Brandon for being here and giving all that great knowledge that he gives. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for joining us on Seller Roundtable.